You could actually go look those up on the internet and see that the council did not make any decision about which books belong in the New Testament, nor did Constantine dictate that that be done. Canon comes from the term canon, which was a measuring stick or a reed. It just refers to a rule or standard by which other things are measured. Now, when we talk about the New Testament canon, we really need to address a popular myth. And the myth is that the Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, in conjunction with the Council of Nicaea, the very famous council in church history, picked the books that were going to be in the New Testament. Now, this idea was popularized through the novel by Dan Brown, The Da Vinci Code. You'll see it picked up on any number of internet sites. And there's just one little problem. It just isn't true. And we know it's not true because we have the decisions that were made at the Council of Nicaea. They were written down, they are codified, they're referred to as the canons of Nicaea. You could actually go look those up on the internet and see that the council did not make any decision about which books belong in the New Testament, nor did Constantine dictate that that be done. Canon comes from the term canon, which was a measuring stick or a reed. It just refers to a rule or standard by which other things are measured. Now, what Constantine did want done is he wanted the church to make a decision. And he sort of forced their hand. What he asked for at Nicaea was 50 copies of the New Testament. He wanted them produced by a certain time so that they could be distributed throughout the empire. If you're, again, a scholar, Christian thinker, and you've been debating which books should be considered canonical and sacred over the last few decades or even a century or so, now you're in a pickle, because now the emperor wants a decision made. He's not dictating what you should do. He's just saying, look, settle it, give us the copies, copy these things out and distribute them through the empire, because this is important. It's important for the churches to know what books they should consider sacred. So he forces the issue. Now, what they decide to do, I think, is kind of smart. It might sound a little weird, a little maybe disturbing. Like, did they really do that? Well, they did it. And what they decided to do, again, I think was the best thing they possibly could have done. Now, there had been a lot of discussion up until the time of Nicaea as to, which books were considered more important than others. And there were actually records, there were opinions, there were lists. And so when Constantine forced this issue on the leadership of the church, they decided to choose those books for canonical status, in other words, to put into this collection that Constantine wanted, those books that everyone could agree on. Now, scholars refer to this as a minimalist canon. So this was the decision that was made. Which are the books that nobody's going to fight over? It's probably the best thing to do, create a minimalist canon. And it turns out historically that those books are the books we have in our New Testament. So there were outliers that certain people within the church liked or defended. They talked about, they argued in favor of, and so on and so forth. But when it came right down to it, making the emperor happy, which was important, they decided we're going to pick the ones that nobody's going to argue with. And so that's how we got a minimalist canon. Now, that might sound a little too human, but we have to realize what their attitude also was in relation to decisions like this. They really believed that the Holy Spirit would guide people, would guide the leadership of the church into recognizing which books should be considered authoritative. So you have actually references in famous church fathers about sort of losing a fight for a certain book. And you'll actually see this reflected that, hey, look, I defended, this book over here, and it didn't make it into the minimalist canon that eventually, again, was copied and perpetuated throughout the Christian world. But I'm okay with that. I'm good with that because I believe that the Spirit of God would work through his anointed leaders, the mass of Christianity, the mass of believers, that the Spirit of God would help us make the right decision, and I'm fine. And again, I think that's the right attitude to have, and it really reflects, on one hand, a decision that is pragmatic, but on the other hand, they just assumed that the Spirit of God was in the decision. and that settled it, and they were good with it. So I think we need to, again, consider that sort of thing when we talk about the New Testament canon.